Welcome everyone. Today we have an updated version of the new Poison Dashing build. Now looking behind me, and there's a Chinese content creator has revealed his particular build in clearing out higher level pits with higher damage with also a new setup that he has just cleared pit 150 with. So we're watching a demonstration of pit 120 and the same concept applied to 150. So what we can see is this particular build is a little different compared to the previous build. Now, if you guys remember the previous build, it looks like this. We're running through, we're dashing through enemies, and we don't look back in explosions. Because around pit 100, we do so much damage that you don't have to look back. So if you guys do want to have a speed farming build around 100 or 105 or 110 with a pit, it is still recommended to use this particular build because it is very fast for lower level pits or around pit 100. But due to popular requests, a lot of the Chinese content creators have been working on higher damage variation of the build, and this is one of the strongest variations at the moment. So looking at this build, and let me briefly explain what is different. Now, one of the biggest difference for this build is that he is using a new unique weapon that stacks supremacy stacks, and I'm going to show you guys the stats after the replay. Now, he is also using the Hunter as a mobility skill, and one thing you can notice is that the Hunter is always off cooldown, and this means not only he's killing monsters to reduce Hunter cooldowns, he's also proccing multiple chances to reduce Hunter cooldowns. So looking over here, the Hunter cooldown is reduced by passive ability like the Swift, which allows him to have even lower cooldowns as he travels around. This build is also extremely mobile and deals a lot higher damage because you are stacking a lot of multipliers. So just a little preview for you guys, using this particular weapon, his attack was over 800,000 during battle. And there's a lot of different stacks in terms of poison damage and also different methods that I will be translating for you guys from the Chinese builder's guide. Now there is one downside for this new setup compared to the previous setup, is because the monsters are a little tankier and you are dashing back and forth to gain additional barriers and also triggering vortex. The content creator we're learning over here is also proccing Vortex multiple times, and he's auto-casting Vortex using the ruins. So this allows him to group the monsters super fast. And of course, against the boss, it doesn't really have any troubles. We can see a demonstration over here, and again, we can be pulling the summons monsters next to the boss, and then one-shotting the boss using the mechanics. Now at the moment, the content creator haven't uploaded his latest replay with pit 150, but he has shared the notes and also the tips and also the latest changes for this particular setup. And in the comments and also in the chats below, a lot of the players have followed this build to clear 150. So it is definitely doable if you guys want to try a higher damage variation that can be very interesting. So before we jump over to the video, a big thank you and also credits to 暗黑老猎人. He's learning from the previous Chinese content creator 非夜NonNight, but he has made his own variations. So now if we come over to his builder's guide, what you're going to notice is, yes, he's using a unique weapon. And this weapon, the biggest factor is to stack supremacy stacks. But unfortunately for the Chinese website, there's a lot of error in translation. So I have translated everything into English, and you're getting +8 to supremacy if you have the maximum greater effects and also hitting the right temporary 3 times. It is not +16. They had some mistakes with translation over here, and it is definitely not 16 if you look at the Chinese one. So what has changed for this higher endgame damage build is that he is now using the unique weapon, which translates into a lot of damage for supremacy and also boosting the primary spirit health bonuses potency for 15 seconds. Now in order to understand exactly how powerful this weapon can be for the build, so here we have some of the translated Chinese notes. What the Chinese content creator is saying is that after using the Hunter ultimate, for the next 15 seconds, all the skills we cast become both Gorilla and also Jaguar skills. And this will allow the player to gain 15% damage from the Jaguar and also the bonus 1500 weapon bonus coming from Gorilla by stacking armor. And together, we can get supremacy to 12% damage per stack. And at 10 stacks, you are getting 120% multiplier damage. So he had a screenshot of his damage board, and without the maximum gears, he was having over 800,000 increased attack. And this of course was during battle, and those are his stats during the fight with 800,000 attack for his character sheets. Now going through some of the other changes, the weapon aspects is now moved to the amulet aspect, while the amulet aspect is now moved over to the pens aspects. So we're still getting additional block chances coming from resolve, and this is translated into additional critical damage. we are still stacking armor for this build, and you can see on the sheets over here, he has close to 5,000 armor, which allows him to gain close to 1,500 bonus weapon damage. Now in terms of the gears and also effects of choice, I do recommend comparing the new variant, which I have added on the third bar. What you can see is he is using the aspects of unwelding hits on the gloves, which is same as before. But you can notice that he is now stacking a lot of armors on his gears with greater FX armor and also greater FX armor on the pants. Together, he is now having one FX attributed in proccing vulnerability onto enemies. And once you see the glyphs and also paragons, you're going to see this allows him to take away the exploit glyph to replace another glyph for higher damage. So this particular FX, the lucky hit chance to proc vulnerability, is essential for this new build to deal even higher damage. Now the final change for this build is that we're now using the duelist aspects, which provide us with higher ferocity that becomes higher increased attack speed after casting the hunter, and this happens very often for additional procs of those particular ruins. Now in terms of the ruins, we can see that the ruins has changed a little bit. Previously we were getting Earthen Bulwark and also 20% maximum life, but this Chinese content creator actually prefers to auto cast Vortex, and this can cast as fast as 2 seconds per Vortex using the new rune setup. And as you're going to see in the replays later, this actually procs a lot of Vortex that crowd control and also knock down enemies, which allows him to do even higher damage. Now there isn't a major change in terms of the mercenaries. He did go over here for higher critical damage bonus instead of getting the additional vulnerability because he is now proccing vulnerability onto his gloves. Now briefly going through the skills for this build. Well, first thing guys, if you're asking the questions why are we getting so many points onto the basic spells, is that because we need to get to the next tree. I often get this question that why are we getting so many basic skill points? So once we get to the next tree, you can see Vortex is automatically casted, which allows us to knock down enemies. And similar to before, we're getting 5 ranks of Toxic Skin. But compared to before, we're not getting higher ranks of Armor Hide and also Scourge. Additional points is actually allocated over here to the Hunter and also points over here because we'll be using the new unique weapon, which turns skills into Jaguar skills, and we'll be benefiting from this. Now briefly going through the Paragon points. The new content creator actually have a Paragon board that is not maxed out to 300, which allows the player themselves to decide if they want to go for additional attack speed or if they want to go for additional resistance should you have higher levels. In terms of the glyphs of choice, we are still using Colossal over here as the main one to increase damage dealt. We're also using the multipliers for Spirit, which allows us to do higher critical damage. And similarly, we're still using Bane, which allows us to do even higher poison damage. There are some changes though. One of the first changes is that we're using Menagerist, which allows us to amplify the glyphs that are blue and also provide us with additional damage by casting different skills like Gorilla, Jaguar, and also Centipede. Finally, the glyph of change over here is going to be Faster, which allows us to do higher damage through dexterity and additional damage against crowd control enemies. Now before we jump over to the game replays again, so let's briefly go through the translated notes. So we talk about the first part because we're stacking supremacy stacks coming from the weapon. This allows us to do higher damage as we stack higher supremacy. Now as we keep going, what we can see is we have some of the frequently asked questions. One of the first questions is why are we stacking Toxic Skin? The Chinese content creators have double checked and also tested. At rank 25, he's getting 2,268% increased damage through poison damage. And this is also multiplied through a lot of skills, passives, and also bonus damage reduction. So what he's saying is this seems to be a spike in gaining higher skill ranks that doesn't seem to be a linear gain of damage. So you're getting more damage as you get higher skill ranks in this particular passive. Now in terms of the having not enough resistance, the mill build we're looking at now has ferocity. So one thing I forgot to mention is that we're now using the duelist aspects, and this provides us with more ferocity stacks. And as you cast the ultimate, you'll be gaining a lot of ferocity. Increased attack speed with faster rushing claw means that we're proccing a lot of barrier gains and also together with a lot more vortex triggers because of the ruins. And together with additional fears of Scourge and also triggering the counter attack, we have a number of defensive mechanics. And if you guys are having higher Paragon level, you can then pick additional defensive perks if you want to feel safer. Now finally, one of the most asked questions is that how are they auto farming over here, and why do we call it auto farming or AFK build? So notice over here they're pretty much auto casting the spells. So I'll direct us to one of the comments that was asked in one of the videos. So some of our viewers was recommending to auto cast skills by getting something heavy under the keyboard and also holding down the keyboard. Other viewers are recommending using macros. I do want to warn you guys, if you are using macros in most of the games similar to Diablo 4, it is against terms and also conditions. But I have heard a lot of players in the community are using macros, so do be careful of this. And this could be one of the ways the Chinese players are auto casting the spells and then, AFK farming using this method. But do be careful, this is a small warning. So coming over to the replays for additional tips and also skill rotations. What is happening is we're always having activation of toxic skin to deal higher damage, and as we jump around with a hunter, you'll be gaining supremacy and also ferocity stacks. After that, you can cast any of your spells. During this time, it is both offensive and also defensive to be dashing around with Russian Claw. Now this can be a little downside. Because you're flipping back and forth, this might not be pleasant for the eyes or can give you motion sickness, so this is the only downside. The reason we're dashing back and forth is so we can trigger a lot more barrier gain together with auto casting vortex non-stop as we dash back and forth. But again guys, this might not be the best playing style because it makes you a little sick as you dash around. This is only to do the highest damage to have the highest survivability for pit 150, keep that in mind. During this time, this particular pit run, you don't really have to do this because this is a demonstration, right? Now, other than that, you can just dash around enemies and most of them will die in seconds after you go past them. Now, in terms of the boss fights, it is same as before. You'll be dashing back and forth to gain additional barrier and also to gain supremacy and also to gain other stacks as you cast your ultimate. Once you pull together the little minions and also explode onto the boss, they usually get one-shotted or two-shotted like this. And this is also the same concept for pit 150. Now the content creator we're following haven't posted the entire replay for pit 150, but he has revealed his updated build and also the screenshots. So the community are believing that he has cleared 150 because there's no reason for him to lie about it, and we can still see the comments that some of the players have used this particular method and clear 150 to clear pit 150. Now do be aware guys, the warning for this build is that you're dashing back and forth and that can cause motion sickness and might not be the best for the eye. But nevertheless, it is still a new build that deals even higher damage. And that's why I want to share this new variant and also the potential of using this new unique weapon should you guys want to pick up this one with greater effects with supremacy on the market while this one's still cheap.